Hey, my name's John. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be making a noodle board or an oven cover. You can also use this for an RV, so these are really used to give you more counter space. You can use your countertop. I've seen people use them also as serving trays, depending on what kind of handles you put on them. It's really just meant to give you more space and decorate your kitchen up a little bit. So there's a few ways, different ways to do this, but currently what I'm going to be using may be different from what you're going to need. But so depending on how deep your stove is going to be based on the material you're going to want to use. So you can, currently what I have here is 1x4s, which actually measure 3/4 of an inch by 3.5 inches. And then I have a 1x2, which is actually 3/4 of an inch by 1.5 inch. And they're 8 feet long. So depending on, like I said, on this, how deep your stove is, the material you're going to use. If you have a 22-inch stove, you can use 1x6s, and you only need 4 boards, 4 1x6s, and you'll get the 22 inches to make your stove. And then the length is not really a big concern. So these are 8-foot boards. So I need anywhere between 29.5 to 30 inches roughly is about what most stove tops are. So on an 8-foot board, you can actually get three out of it, out of 8-foot board. So I'll need 6 for mine. What'll end up happening is I'll have the 21 inches from the 6, and then this 1x2 will make it 22.5. So that way I have the extra ½ inch. So you may not like that look, but you can do it just in on what you have. So what I'm going to do is I've already pre-measured these to 29.5 inches. I will end up cutting 6 of these, and then cutting just 1 of these at the 29.5 inch mark, and the rest of those will be used for the side. So I'll do that, and I'll be right back. Alright, so I got all the boards cut. As you can see, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 the big ones, and 1 of the small ones. Make sure they're square on the one side. And then what you're going to do is for the side rail that's going to sit on top to hold this all together, what you're going to want to do is make sure that your boards are tight. If you can clamp them together, but really you just want to make sure that they're flush one way or another across the top. And then you're just going to want to push this against, make sure it's good, and I have them nice and tight, it's flush. And then you're just going to mark your line, go out and cut. You'll do the same for the other side. You can measure across too. One of the things to keep in mind is these boards aren't perfect all the way across, so even though you may think it's 22, 22.5 or whatever, it may actually be a little bit smaller, a little bit bigger, so just have to double check that with your own measurements. Alright, so I got all the edges cut. You can use wider boards if you'd like the wider board. I'm using the smaller ones just because that's what I had left over for this middle piece. So, but you can definitely I'm trying to use minimal scrap. You can also, if you want, you can get another one to go around. I've also seen people have these ones stand up higher and have handles on the top part too, to make it as a serving tray. But currently what I like to point out is whatever side you see facing you currently is what you'll see, because this is exactly how it'll be laying on the stove. And this will be on the top, and I will have handles, which I have not bought yet, to go there. So you want your best wood looking up. It'll help with minimizing sanding if you have big gouges or knots that are missing. So currently that's what I have. I have the best pieces of wood facing up. And then I'll set it up and show you how. Basically I'm just going to take everything, flip it over, and then I'm going to use these 1-inch screws. They're interior. They're, if you can see, they're flat heads, so that when I screw them in, they won't scrape the stove. Because technically the bottom part of this will be the stove. So you can also countersink if you want, but these will go down enough where I don't have to worry about it. 1 inch, like I said, because it's 3/4 inch material, so it'll come through. You don't want it really much bigger than that, or else you can have the screw head poke through, and I don't want to see any screws. So that's currently what I'm going to do. Alright, so I got all my boards flipped over here, and what I'm going to do now is, well, actually what I already did was I marked 3/4 of the way in on the board. That way I knew kind of center line is when I go through, when I go to mark them. But anyways, what you need to do is make sure to square your boards up so you don't accidentally have it go crooked. So one thing that I do is I take a square, and you'll want to square it, but first what I'm going to do is stick some glue on the back side of this board. Again, you just got to remember roughly where you're at so you don't go too far. You don't need a crazy amount, just a little bit of glue. I can smear it a little bit with your finger, and it won't really matter in a minute because we're going to sand it, this whole thing anyway. So but what we'll do then is we'll get our board down, and we're going to square it up both ways. I only have one square, but just kind of got to go back and forth, make sure there's nothing on the floor to mess up your square, and we'll just get it somewhat close. Doesn't have to be perfect. And then once you get it where you want it, you're just going to have to take your drill here, get it in the center, and just drill it in. And again, you want to make sure it's below the surface. That's why I like the flat head. And there you go. It's nice and it's square on both sides. And you're going to do that. Continue to go down the board. I really recommend you do one side, then the other, and then you just kick out the bottom to make sure that's flush. And work your way down. If not, you may have some issues down at the end, and it'll be crooked. You can also screw one in on this side, take a tape measure, go across, and you can make sure it's square that way too, which I will end up doing here in a minute. But you need some place to start. I don't have a clamp or a table that I have pegs that I can hold this in while I move it around. So you just kind of have to do it on the ground. You gotta have to start somewhere. So if I know this side's square or is pretty close to square, when I take a tape measure across, I can, move it across to make it work. Alright, I got it all squared up. I have the lines going down on both sides. I marked it the rest of the way. And just so you can see, at about 36 and 15/16 that way. And I am about 36 and 15/16 that way. Once you got it squared up, then you can continue to drill your screws in down both sides. Make sure your boards are flush again as you go. You don't want one board kicked because remember they're loose. Like I said, I do plan on gluing every board as I go down too to give it a little bit more strength. Alright, so I got it in, it's all sanded down, rounded over the edges a little bit on the cut sides. Need to make sure it's wiped down, and people use like tack cloths, stuff like that. I just usually use an air compressor, and I actually use a floor brush first to wipe off the main dust, and then use a air compressor in between to get the dust out. So on any pine, I really recommend a pre-stain. Especially if you're using water-based stain, which I'm going to get them on these on sale sometimes. This is a what's this, American walnut. You can go in there and get these for 50 cents to a couple bucks depending on what it is. But anyway, so I'm going to do the American walnut. But first I'm going to put a coat of pre-stain on it, let it sit, follow the directions on the back of the Minwax can, and go from there. I just use for the pre-stain, I'll use a foam brush, and then when I actually apply the stain, I'll use a rag. All right, thanks. All right, here we go. I have it stained with the American walnut. It came out pretty good. I don't think I'd really change anything. Like I said, there's some few things you can do. If you want a wide board on the side, you can, or if you want to add some strips on the front or back. I will end up getting some handles to hold it up. But anyways, that's what it looks like after it's stained. I'll let you know what it looks like after I do some more things to it. I wanted to show you the difference between the Danish oil and the American walnut. So no pre-stain, obviously, on Danish oil. It's just straight Danish oil. You can see the difference between that and the American walnut. This one's going to be for our house. I already have a dining room table and coffee stand done in Danish oil, so I will probably polyurethane both these just to help protect it in stains, but that's the difference between the two. If you like a darker, there's also like espresso, I think, which is darker than the American walnut, but it's kind of a dark but not too dark. And Danish oil is more of a it's Danish oil, but it's dark walnut also. I forgot to mention that. So, but that's the difference between the American walnut, let's see, Minwax stain, water-based, versus the Danish oil, dark walnut, and that's obviously it's Watco oil-based.